Rob Dauster here. I got Jeff Goodman with me.
Hell no.
John Fink.
Are we still live?
Field of 68 till I die.
I'm sorry, man. I blacked out.
Randolph Children.
DJ Khaled, you know the big DJ Khaled guy?
Hands thrown up and in.
Goodman needs to be fired all the time.
Josh Pastner.
You're going to beat people straight up.
You know the deal.
They have no swag. They have no nothing.
Terrell McNeil.
From the bluest of the blue bloods to the smallest of the mid-majors.
This is Field of 68 after dark.
Hello and welcome to the Tuesday evening edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. My name is Rob Dauster. I have Daddy Brad, a.k.a. Jeff Goodman, with me, and we are going to be breaking down the league that Brad Underwood coaches in. The Big Ten, we have a Big Ten offseason reset that we are going to be diving into. We're going to talk about winners over the course of the last 8 weeks. We're going to talk about the biggest losers over the course of the last 8 weeks, the biggest storylines heading into next season, the X factors, and we are going to be diving into the breakout players and breakout teams in the league. Goodman, I don't know how much prep you've done for this show. Generally speaking, you do absolutely zero prep, but there are a solid 8 or 9 candidates for breakout stars in the Big Ten heading into next season. I'm excited to hear what you have to say about that, putting you on the spot. We're also going to be having an interview with potential number 1 pick Alex Sarr's coach, John Rillie. He's a former American college coach that is now coaching the Perth Wildcats out there in the NBL. Alex Sarr is a potential number 1 pick in this year's draft class, and Goodman sat down with Rillie to break down Sarr's game and kind of talk through what this kid is as a player and what his potential is long term. That's interesting. Make sure you guys are tuning into the Field of 68. We're going to have about 30 NBA draft prospect profiles going up. We're about 10 into that group at this point right now. So make sure you guys are locked in on the Field of 68 YouTube channel to be able to check those out. Before we do, though, Jeff, I want to start with this. We had a long conversation and a long argument about this over text during the week, because your idea and your concept of what constitutes an underrated player is baffling to me. Okay. Before we get into this and before you respond, I'm just going to set the table here, right? We wanted to do something on the most underrated transfers, the guys that are going to have the biggest impact, the guys that are going to be the best players that maybe aren't getting enough attention nationally. We had Pop Isaacs, Texas Tech transfer, going to Creighton next year as a top 10 transfer in the class, right? He is outside the top 20 on ESPN. He's outside the top 25 on CBS. He's outside the top 50 according to The Athletic. I wanted him as our most underrated transfer because we have him top 10. And what did you say to me? We could put up the screen grab of the text if we need to. You said, no, we rated him properly. Everybody else had him wrong. What do you think underrated is? What does underrated mean, Jeff?
Well, it means that obviously you don't pay attention to Jeff Borzello and ESPN's transfer rankings, number one, because he's got this thing all wrong, as do everybody else who's not put Pop Isaacs somewhere in the top, at least 20. To me, again, you can make a case for him being top 10. I think this is a kid who played with a hip injury all of last season, wasn't 100%, never complained, obviously went through some off-the-court stuff as well. But he is exactly what Creighton needed and ordered. And I think the combination of Pop Isaacs and Ryan Kalkbrenner at the 1 and the 5 will be as good as almost any in the entire country, Rob. So I hear what you're saying, and I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt here and admit I was wrong. But I will say some of these other slappies who have not put Pop Isaacs in the top 20 need to reevaluate their transfer rankings. Evan Maradona.
Yeah, look, I don't know if I would say Pop Isaacs is a top 10 player in the portal. If you want to argue me on that or argue with me on that, I don't feel that strongly, but I think he's a really good player. I don't know if he's necessarily a top 10 player in the portal, but if we're talking about guys that are going to have an impact, and we're talking about guys that are a perfect fit for the place that they're going, if you can give me a player that's going to work his ass off on D, that can run off of screens and shoot, and that is not afraid to be able to pull from 25 feet with a hand in his face, Pop Isaacs fits perfectly into what Greg McDermott wants to do offensively.
Hey, wasn't he the best player in the best league on a team that kind of overachieved per what we thought they were going to do this year, right? I mean, I forget what they were a seed at the end of the day, but they didn't just squeak in to the NCAA tournament. I think they were like a 6 seed or something like that at the end of
Mhm.
the day. So I don't know. I just think of all these other guys that we've got
Real
ranked
quick, Jeff,
high
they
up
were
there.
a 6 seed and they finished tied for third in the Big 12 conference last season, 2 games out of first place.
And he was clearly, to me, their best player in the best league in America. So, while we have the great Osibors, some of these guys higher than him, some people do, myself included. Like, you can make a case for that. That's fine. But great Osibor still did it in a league that wasn't nearly as good as the Big 12. Would we agree?
Yeah, look, Pop Isaacs is a really, really good player, and he proved a lot to me in terms of what I thought he was going to be heading into last season. I was down on Texas Tech heading into last season. Part of it was because I didn't know if you could have Pop be the best player on a team that was going to be the third best team in the Big 12 and a top 6 seed in the NCAA tournament, and he proved me wrong there. So
You've
I'm going to
gone from
be.
a Pop hater. You've really gone from a Pop hater to a guy that has completely gone on the other side, and now you're heading up. You might be the VP right now of the Pop Isaacs bandwagon.
I'm definitely driving the Pop Isaacs bandwagon. I don't know if Pop hater is probably too strong, but Pop skeptic is definitely accurate, and he proved me wrong. So I'm excited to see what he can do at Creighton next year. I think he's going to have a big season. Him and Stephen Ashworth are going to be a lot of fun. And the one concern I think that anybody would have looking at them is you got 2 smaller guards in a backcourt. What are they going to do defensively? Well, they're just going to climb up in you, make you put the ball on the floor, and deal with the big fella Ryan Kalkbrenner at the rim. All right, let's get into some of the other underrated transfers that we have. And for me, the next guy on the list was relatively easy to kind of plug in there. I don't think anyone's talking enough about JP Pegues at Auburn, the Furman transfer that is now going to be playing point guard for Bruce Pearl at Auburn. What do you make of his fit with the Tigers?
Listen, to me, the biggest question we've had, and rightfully so, over the last few years for Bruce Pearl is their point guard play. It's been inconsistent. It's been at a place where you just don't trust their point guards, kind of knowing. Last year, they couldn't really break you down. The previous couple of years, it was Wendell Green, like you just didn't know what he was capable of doing. He could have a huge game and then follow it up with a disastrous game. I think JP Pegues is exactly what Auburn ordered, which is a guy who's going to be solid. Who's going to make the right plays, who's a veteran who plays the position the right way. He could score some too, and he did that at Furman. But I think he can be a guy that gives you reliability at that position, which they have not had for a few years. And I think it's really, to me, handicapped the ceiling of what Auburn could do the last few years.
Yeah, he is a guy that can get into the lane. He is a guy that can create for others. He is a guy that can bang home threes. He is a guy that has hit big shots in big moments. You remember the game-winning 3 that he hit against Virginia in the first round of the tournament in 2023 as 13th seed Furman upset number 4 seed Virginia. That was him that made that shot. He shot 36% from 3, more than 7.5 threes per game. He is exactly the kind of player that Bruce Pearl looks for at a point guard. And we've seen him try to find this guy or this a player in this mold, with an Aiden Holloway, with a Wendell Green, with a Sharif Cooper. He's kind of been chasing the Jared Harper dream ever since they made it to the Final Four. And I'm not saying that JP Pegues is going to be Jared Harper, because Jared Harper was an all-SEC, borderline all-American caliber point guard. But I think that JP Pegues is going to be as close to Jared Harper as we've seen for Auburn since then. Give me a couple of the other names that you have on your underrated transfers list, and then we can get into some more of this here in a second. But who else do you have? Who are we sleeping on as a nation when it comes to some of these transfers?
I think Zeke Mayo at Kansas. I think everybody's been talking about A.J. Storr and Rylan Griffin, 2 guys that did it at the highest level. But what if Rylan Griffin doesn't shoot it as well as he did at Alabama last year? Well, you have a guy in Zeke Mayo who did it at South Dakota State for a few years and was as good a player as there was in the Summit League. So I think Zeke Mayo is a guy who's coming home to Lawrence. I think that's going to be fun for him. And again, everybody's just kind of overlooking him and saying, well, it's all about A.J. Storr. It's all about Rylan Griffin. Well, you know what? We saw it last year. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket shooting the basketball. And Zeke Mayo can shoot the crap out of it as well.
I got another one for a blue blood for you that people are overlooking. Sion James at Duke. He's a 23-year-old, 6'6", 220-pound transfer from Tulane that is built like a defensive end, that averaged 14 points, 5.5 boards, and just under 3 assists, that shot 38% from three on almost 4 attempts per game, that is going to step into a role at Duke where they're basically saying, be big, guard people, be physical, and make threes around a guy like a Cooper Flagg and a Tyrese Proctor. And I don't think you have a better you could ask for a better fit than a Sion James. Like, everyone's been talking about Mason Gillis. Oh, he's perfect for this role. And Malik Brown, we can see exactly what he's going to do when he transfers to Duke. Well, Sion James is the guy that had the better season than either of those two guys individually. And I think that he's going to step in at Duke and really surprise some people in terms of the impact that he has.
Yeah, I'll give you another one, and we'll flip over to leagues a little bit. I'm trying to come up with one from a different league. Big East, Ryan Conwell. Xavier, they brought in, as you've said, 7 transfers. They bring back Davion McKnight, Zach Fremantle. Hopefully Jerome Hunter's healthy this year as well. But I think Ryan Conwell's a guy that kind of, went under the radar because he went early. Xavier did most of their work early on in the transfer season, which is why, again, you kind of forgot what they did with those 7 kids. But to me, Conwell's a guy who can shoot it, who put up numbers for a really good Indiana State team last year. He rebounds his position. He's got good size. So I think he'll be a really good piece. They're not going to have – Fremantle might be their leading scorer if he stays healthy. And then I think you're going to have a bunch of guys, honestly, from, 8, 9 points to about 12, 13. You might have 4 or 5 other guys like that for Xavier, and Conwell will be one of them.
Yeah. I really like the Ryan Conwell call. Again, we talked about the Big East. I think it was now a week ago, and I did not put together just how good Xavier's transfer class was, so I finally sat down and looked at it. They're going to be, to me, they're a borderline top 25 team that is going to be as good as anybody in that conference not named UConn. I think that they are right there with the likes of Creighton and St. John's, and I'm probably blanking on someone, so don't get mad at me, but they're going to be right there battling at the top of the league. A couple more that I want to throw at you, all right? Yeah. Number one, Andrei Stojakovic transferring to Cal, a former McDonald's All-American. The son of the legendary Peja Stojakovic is transferring. He's basically doing what his coach did, right? He's going from Stanford to Cal, which I thought, my understanding was you weren't allowed to make the leap across that rivalry. What's happening here, Jeff?
Yeah, kind of crazy, right? Kind of crazy, but I love that pick. I remember seeing him in the circuit a couple of years ago, and he was unbelievable shooting the ball from deep. And, some guys struggle as freshmen, and he did in college. But I think with a year under his belt, he's going to show what he can do. I'm going to give you another one from, I believe, your number one preseason team in the country, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Did you pick him number one? Right? You did, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I got him number one.
All right. So everybody's talking about Aiden Holloway. Everybody's talking about Big Cliff. What they got coming back, obviously Sears coming back and Reitzel and Grant Nelson. How about the guy who helped lead South Florida last year to an unbelievable season, right? They won the AAC out of nowhere, beating Memphis, beating FAU. Chris Youngblood comes over, averaged about 15 points a game last year at USF, comes over, and again, don't sleep on the fact that he's going to be a very, very important piece for Nate Oates in his Alabama Crimson Tide team. I just don't think anybody's talked about him. And again, you're going to need, what is Nate Oates going to have next year that not a lot of teams can match up with? Their depth. And he didn't really have it this year.
Yeah, the shooting too. Here's another one for you. I'm going to stick in the SEC. Sean Padula from Virginia Tech. Back-to-back seasons, averaging about 15 points and 4 assists. The shooting numbers were down. The efficiency was a little bit down. I think that had to do with the role that he was asked to play on a Virginia Tech team that wasn't really all that good. But he's heading to Ole Miss. He's going to be surrounded by a lot of talent. If you talk to any of the ACC nerds, ACC fanboys, ACC hype men that we have on the Field of 68 network, they all rave about how good this dude is. And honestly, here's another one for you. Another point guard that I think is going under the radar. Doug McDaniel at Kansas State, transferring from Michigan. He put up huge numbers for Michigan last year on a team that wasn't very good. I told you this when we were talking about Terrace Reed. I'm willing to let everything kind of slide that happened last year with a lot of these guys that are leaving Michigan because of what was going on in and around that program, because of some of the issues that were happening there. So I think Doug McDaniel playing for Jerome Tang in an offense is going to allow a point guard to just go out there and cook is a really, really good combination and a match that is made in heaven there.
Yeah, Kerry Booth, another one, going from Notre Dame to Illinois. Talented big guy. I still can't believe he left Notre Dame because he was getting some minutes, maybe not as much as he liked. But, again, I could see him having a hell of a season at Illinois. Who else? Who else we got?
Well, there's two other that I had on the list written down for me. One of them is Michael Ajayi going to Gonzaga, and we kind of talked about his importance with the Zags and the fact that they needed like another big wing, another big shooter, another guy that can kind of space the floor, and he checks a lot of those boxes. He has this NBA upside because of his size and his versatility and his ability to make a jump shot. The last one is Frankie Fiddler, and I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how he is used with Michigan State because of Tom Izzo's reluctance to kind of go into the transfer market. You got a kid, a big 6'7" wing, average 20 points a game in the Summit League previously. We've seen kids from the Summit League transfer up to the higher levels and be able to have some success. So I'll be very curious. I'm very interested to see what will happen with Frankie Fiddler at Michigan State.
I got one more, and I think we need to finish the segment with this guy. And I wonder if you can figure out where I'm headed this way. But he's now in Charlottesville, Virginia. He was the best player on the circuit a couple years ago in AAU ball. He didn't get the opportunity to play at Cameron Indoor Stadium very much this past year. Didn't really crack the rotation. One, TJ Power going to Virginia and now being coached by Tony Bennett. And not just TJ Power. I love Day-Day Ames too. I actually think Tony Bennett did much better in the portal than I thought he would do this year. So I'm really excited to see if Tony Bennett can kind of get back and, earn his rightful place atop the ACC regular season standings, because he's kind of owned that.
Yeah, his rightful place. That wasn't the only addition that they made. They got Jalen Worley from Florida State, and they added Elijah Saunders from San Diego State, who I actually think has a chance to be really, really good. And look, you're right about TJ Power. One of the issues that John Shire had last season is that he listened to Kanye West when Kanye said no one man should have all that power. Listen, when we get back, we are going to be getting a interview with John Rillie, the Perth Wildcats head coach and the guy that coached potential #1 pick Alex Sarr in the 2024 NBA draft. We'll get to that next. No more jokes from me. If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 throughout the year. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. The best part, all you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your own hard-earned money to be eligible. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. BetMGM is going to have some fun offers available throughout the NBA playoffs. Bet insurance tokens, odds boost, and what I love, a nice parlay booster too from time to time, as well as a ridiculous array of player prop bets for any sport that you could possibly imagine betting on. BetMGM is and always will be the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app, use the bonus code FIELD, and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content that you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the podcast. Like and share the YouTube videos. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show.
All right, our newest edition of Field of 68 2024 NBA Draft Prospect Profiles takes us to the potential #1 overall pick, and that is Alex Sarr, 7'1", 220, born in France, played for the Real Madrid youth team,
came over, played at Overtime Elite for a couple of years, and this past season went to Australia and played for the Perth Wildcats, where he was coached by John Rillie, who we have here now to break down his game, to give us some insight on Alex Sarr and kind of what he's all about. And John, we've known each other. You coached over here in the States. You were with Leon Rice at Boise State. You were with Joe Pasternak at Santa Barbara. You went to Perth this past season and had the opportunity to coach potentially the #1 overall pick in this draft. I want to know more about Alex Sarr. And can we start? Let's start with his strengths. Let's start with the things that really stick out and NBA teams really like about Alex Sarr.
Yeah, look, I think before we talk about the on-court ability, off the court, he's very grounded and very well-rounded. In your introduction, like he's lived life in several different countries already. So that kind of helps ground him. His older brother, Olivier, that some people might be familiar with from Wake Forest in Kentucky, he really looks up to his brother. And due to his career, he's learned from that as well. So like very well spoken, understands, can read a room no matter how that room's filled, which I think is very important to understand that dynamic as you move up in the professional world.
All right, so adjusted, like you said, he's bounced around a little bit, which probably will serve him well going into the NBA and adjust to life in the professional ranks. Describe his game for me, and again, his biggest strengths as a player are what?
Yeah, so the easy answer when you're 7'1" and moving as athletic as he is his maturing versatility. Because he is only 18, still somewhat physically immature. So the upside and where his career can go, I don't think anyone can give you an exact answer to that, because when you get into this, people always say, well, who do you compare him to? I think that's a little unfair to him, because where he could potentially get to, and that can be a double-edged sword. But if you track him through our season and where he was previously, he's showing a nice trajectory as far as progression and rounding out his game. Where he can help a team immediately is defensively. The way he moves, he can help in all different kinds of ball screen coverage. And then he certainly has the ability to switch onto smaller guards, quicker guards, and keep them in front and then protect the rim. Offensively, the thing that I really gravitated to when I first watched film was his willingness to share the ball. Because as a rookie, he's not going to be that 18 to 20 a game. But how does he find the next action on offense? How does he play out of the short roll? All of that. And then on top of that, he's very capable with his feet set from three. So his offensive package is really rounding out, but it's his defensive versatility that everyone gets excited about right now.
So listening to you, it sounds like, again, offensively, not quite there yet. It's going to take some time. And, for anybody who's going to be drafted #1 in the draft, there's going to be expectations for him. And it sounds like he's going to be a piece. And whoever goes #1 in this draft might be a piece forever. They might not be a guy who's an NBA superstar. What are his biggest weaknesses? Is it right now the ability to give him the ball? And I know he didn't put up huge numbers for you offensively. I think he averaged about 9.5 points a game, and he missed some time due to a hip injury in the middle of the season. But what are his biggest weaknesses? What are the things you see him struggling at early on in his career?
Like just with any young kid, your ability to absorb physical contact against grown men. What I can tell you and anyone that cares to listen to this is, if you watch him from day one with us versus playing the Tasmania Jack Jumpers in the playoffs, you see a great progress there. Like his understanding of like drop coverage and moving north and south instead of a little east-west, and how that just keeps you in better positions with your angles and all of that type of stuff. So, like, that's a weakness, but that's something that's going to come. Like, we're all 18 years old at one stage, and our body's a little different at the age that we currently are. So he's got that trajectory to go. Um, like the thing offensively where we can be a little harsh on him is the overall package, because I think he's really trying to explore who he is as an offensive player. Because in his early days, he was more of a back to the basket, because he was 7 foot, so you just naturally got told to be close to the rim. Where with me, I allowed him to rebound, push the ball, initiate actions. And then when we run some simple sets where he'd pick and pop, like we have the MVP on our team, Bryce Cotton, former Providence player. We played an early season game where Bryce trusted him to make like big, decisive 3-point shots at the end of the game. So what I can tell you is if you just purely look at statistics, numbers, but he has a great sense of the occasion for the game, and he is willing to step up and take those shots. And when I talk about that, we're lucky enough, our atmosphere is 14,000 very vocal fans. So for an 18-year-old, it was either 4 or 5 games into the season and 2 minutes to go, very close game, and he knocks back-to-back threes down.
Really? Wow.
So he knocks them down, and the best player in the league trusted him in that moment.
Yeah,
So
that's cool.
there's some unique things where you can get muddled up in the statistics a little too much at times, I think.
So 7'1", 220, and eventually you think he can be a versatile offensive big, it sounds like, who maybe
Like absolutely, like NBA basketball, playing out of the short roll, like his natural feel for the game is being a distributor, but his scoring out of the short roll in different ways will only progress as he gets stronger and his athleticism improves. But then he can pick and pop, put the ball on the floor. So where that gets to, he's really going to dictate a lot of that.
Yeah. And I mean, 7'4.5" wingspan, right? Like a 9',
Yep.
2.5" standing reach. So, 7'1", he's long. We know that. It
Yep.
sounds like, he's athletic, he's fluid, he's versatile, he's skilled. Like he's got some of all of that, doesn't he?
Yes, yes. And like that's one of my conversations with him. It's great to be versatile, but then when whoever's coaching him looks down and goes, "What are we going to get from you?" At some stage in your career, you got to get to that part. Now, if he's playing with other great players, his versatility is going to be his strength. But as you want to grow as a player yourself, you got to be able to say, like, this is what I'm getting from you. And I'm telling you, his versatility defensively, his rim protection, it can go to a level that very few people have.
And works hard, like off the
Yes.
court is a
Yeah, like basketball matters to him.
Yeah, that's good. That's what you
Yeah.
want, right? You want somebody
Absolutely.
that's coachable. It sounds like, I mean, he's got the whole package, right? High
Yes.
character, coachable, talented, can obviously defend at a high level, and probably the big thing to what his ceiling, and if he reaches it, is probably, it sounds like, in the offensive end and how much he develops.
Yes, and like I think he's shown and he's flirted enough with the offensive end that it gives hope.
Yeah, he's gotten way better.
Yeah,
shooting the ball, right? I mean,
correct.
came in
Absolutely.
not as a non-shooter, but not as a confident shooter, and
Yes.
now leaves Perth as a pretty confident shooter.
Yes. Yep. So no, like he's spoiled myself and the Perth Wildcats franchise for any future next stars. That's for sure.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yep.
Well, listen, John Rillie, coach of the Perth Wildcats, talking about Alex Sarr in the Field of 68 2024 NBA Draft Prospect Profiles presented by Unified Healing. John, we appreciate it, man, and hopefully we'll see you back in the States here soon. But I'm hoping, I know you're enjoying your current gig in Perth. My wife's been trying to get me to Australia for a long time, so that flight is a little bit lengthy, but I think she's going to wear me down, and I'm going to get there at some point. I'd love to get over there and see you.
The flight will be worth it, and I appreciate your time, Jeff.
Thanks, John.
By now, you guys have surely heard about Autograph, an app founded by Tom Brady with the intention of disrupting the way that fans consume content covering their favorite teams. Here's how the app works. All of the podcasters and bloggers and digital creators covering a team have their content sent to that team's page in Autograph. Instead of having to bounce from site to site or try to navigate the only safe for work spaces that are left on X, you just scroll through Autograph. This isn't a hard sell. This is the truth. I'm a UConn fan. I use the Autograph app to keep up with the writers I read and the pods that I listen to. The best part is that every piece of content that you consume gives you reward points. The more you get, the more chances you have at things like discounted tickets and signed memorabilia. Here's the best part. We've partnered with Autograph to donate $1 to the V Foundation every time someone downloads the app using the code F68, with a minimum of $2,500 getting donated. The app is free, so download using the code F68 and help us raise some money and give Autograph a try. I promise you it will be worth it. And while we're here, a quick reminder, make sure that you subscribe to the Daily. We have new landing pages with deep dives into each coaching change, as well as a tracker that provides scouting reports on the transfers that have entered the portal that you are going to want to know about. It's just $50 for the year, which means that for less than $1 per week, you get analysis that our insiders send direct to your inbox every single morning. Hit the link below to subscribe. Welcome back to the Field of 68 After Dark. It is the Tuesday evening edition. We are live on YouTube. We are streaming over on Stadium. Rob Dauster, Jeff Goodman. Just so you guys know, be prepared that Jeff finally was able to get an interview with Alex Sarr's coach. Now, all we're going to hear about for the next 3 weeks is how good Alex Sarr is, where he recycles all of the sound bites and the quotes that we got from John Rillie during that interview. So just put your seatbelts on and be ready to be
I'm not getting kickbacks.
Beat over the head with Alex Sarr hype.
I don't get kickbacks from, international players.
Okay, moving on. Listen, let's get into the Big Ten offseason reset as we dive into it. We're going to talk about some of the biggest storylines. Purdue without Zach Edey, Dusty May making his debut at Michigan, Pac-12 teams joining the league, some of the X factors. Will Mike Woodson play 4 guards or 2 bigs? What's he going to end up doing there? As well as the Illinois European experiment, which I think will be really interesting. Also, in the next segment, Jeff, I cannot wait to see who you are going to pick to be your one breakout star in the Big Ten. I want like your number 1 rated guy here, because there's like 19 different players that you could pick for that list. But we're going to start with this. Biggest winners and the biggest losers over the course of the last 6 to 8 weeks since the season ended and since the transfer portal opened. To me, there are 2 teams that are clear winners that are part of the Big Ten and that were part of the Big Ten last season on this list. Let's see if you agree with me and who they are.
I mean, Indiana, clearly. Like, you can't even argue that Indiana is one of the top winners. They did a great job going early in the portal. They got one of the better point guards in Miles Rice, one of the better bigs, Umar Ballo, actually a shooter in Luke Goody. Cannon Carlisle can shoot it as well. Didn't shoot it great, and Miles Rice struggled down the stretch to shoot it. But they did a good job, and they kept, Mackenzie Mbako and Malik Renew and Galloway. So I think Indiana's put himself in a position now where if they don't win at least 1 tournament game, probably 2, and aren't in the top 25 all year, the Mike Woodson era will end after this season.
Yeah, that's one of the 2 teams that I had written down, and I think that Indiana is a clear top 10 to 15 roster in America. Whether or not that means they're going to be a top 10 to 15 team all season long is a completely different conversation, and one that we're going to have a little bit later. But what the work that they were able to do in the portal this year was really, really impressive. You mentioned Miles Rice. You mentioned Umar Ballo. I think Cannon Carlisle is a kid that's going to have a chance to be really good there. And adding a guy that can plug a hole and fill a role that Luke Goody should be able to do will be something that is interesting to see. And again, getting back Malik Renew and getting back Mackenzie Mbako and Trey Galloway is arguably just as important as bringing in some of those players in the portal. The other one that I had written down for the clear winners, and let me know if you agree with this, is Ohio State. I think being able to go out and get Michi Johnson, go out and get a guy with a winning pedigree, a veteran like a Micah Parrish, keeping a point guard like a Bruce Thornton around. I love the backcourt combination of Bruce and Michi. And then being able to get a couple of high upside swings with freshman transfers, Aaron Bradshaw and Sean Stewart. I look at what Jake Diebler has right now on this roster, and I'm talking myself into them as being a preseason top 25 team, which is wild when you think about where they were even just 5 months ago in January, that Ohio State is going to get rid of head coach Chris Holtmann and be able to have the guy that steps in as interim, win a whole bunch of games, and then put together a roster that on paper looks like a top 25 roster in America.
Yeah, no, it's hard to argue. I mean, they got really good guards, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. When you start with Bruce Thornton and Michi Johnson, it gives you a chance. And then you got Bradshaw up front, who I still think talent-wise is one of the top talents in the entire country. Just was kind of overmatched last year, and again, missed so much time in the preseason that I thought he looked like a deer in headlights for much of the season. But it'll be interesting to see what he can do. My number 2 might be Michigan, actually. I think what Dusty May's done, putting this team together, I'm really intrigued to see how good they are and how they mesh together. But I like the fact that, listen, they've gone from a team that finished in the cellar of the Big Ten a year ago to one that now we're talking about in year 1 of the Dusty May era has a chance to get back to the NCAA tournament. I mean, you look at up front, he brings Vlad Golden with him from FAU, adds Trey Donaldson in the backcourt, tough, guard from Auburn, Roddy Gale coming over, who's had success at Ohio State on the wing. And then, Danny Wolf coming from Yale, super talented, big. It'll be interesting to see how Wolf and Golden play alongside one another. Then you had Sam Walters, shooter from Alabama, and Reuben Jones, kind of a jack of all trades guy from North Texas. So I thought he did a really, really, and he brought back Namari Burnett, one guy who's a good piece as well, who was there last year. So I like that team. I think they have a chance. Again, I'm not saying they're going to win the Big Ten, but all I'm saying is like their roster looks solid up and down. I think you've got a bunch of good players. I don't know if you have a star on the team. I think Roddy Gale probably needs to become that. And if the switch flips for him and stays on, Roddy Gale could average 18 a game.
Yeah, I have Michigan down as one of the X factors in this league because I don't necessarily know what to expect.
Yeah, fair.
When you're bringing in 6 transfers and 3 of them are big guys that maybe aren't necessarily going to be the greatest or most mobile defenders in college basketball. I know Vlad is a really good rim protector, but he's not. It's not necessarily the modern version of what you're looking for out of a 5-man. I don't know. I'm a little bit more skeptical of the way that everything kind of fits together on that roster than you are, but I think that they should be a tournament team because I think Trey Donaldson is really good and Roddy Gale has a chance to end up being a breakout player. A couple more winners for me. Rutgers, I think, did a really, really good job, not only being able to hang on to the 2 stud freshmen they got coming in, but being able to put pieces around them that are going to be effective. Jeremiah Williams coming back, I think, is a really big addition. Jordan Durkak, I know he averaged 17 at Merrimack, but he is a guy that was known as kind of like their junkyard dog, jack of all trades, switchable defensive piece that I think will be a really good fit in really well next to Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. And then Tyson Acuff from Eastern Michigan is an absolute bucket. So you're going to have 2 guys in the backcourt that can go out and score with Rutgers. The other big winner that I had was UCLA. Getting Kobe Johnson, getting Sky Clark, bringing back Sebastian Mack, bringing back Dylan Andrews, bringing back Lazar Stevanovic, and being able to Mick was able to keep the pieces that he wanted while also being able to add a couple of really nice additions. I think Kobe Johnson has a chance to be an NBA player if it all plays out right for him at UCLA.
One more for me, Maryland. They kept Julian Reese. They got Derek Queen when a lot of people didn't think. They thought he was going to go to Indiana, and he's only a freshman, but a super skilled big guy who you can play through. I think Deshaun Harris-Smith is going to take a jump. He'll make some shots this year. And Jacoby Gillespie, one of the most underrated. We didn't really talk about him when we talked about underrated transfers, but he belongs in the discussion. The Belmont transfer who who can do everything. I mean, really, he can shoot it, score at a high clip. He'll come in and help them as a guy who's already delivered and been a leading scorer for a pretty good team. So I just don't think they're going to stay down. I think last year was one of those abnormal seasons for Kevin Willard that he hadn't had in a long time.
Well, I think it says a lot about where the Big Ten is right now that, yes, I also have Maryland on my list in terms of like the biggest winners, and they're probably like 5th or 6th on my list. But I still think that they're going to be they're going to end up being like a top 25-ish kind of a team. And when you look at the number of programs in the league and the number of teams that are going to end up having better seasons than last year, it's pretty impressive. There are a lot of teams that were able to go out and do some good things. We haven't even talked about Washington going out and getting like one of the top 5 transfers in the portal in Great Ossipor this season. So a lot of good things in the Big Ten. Let's go to losers. And for me, again, well, look, you're trying to use my joke against me. It's not working. It was really ineffective. But to me, there are 2 that really stand out more than anything else. They are Oregon, and the biggest reason for Oregon is that Mfale Dante got his waiver for a 5th year denied. I don't want to go into whether or not that was the correct decision, because I think that there are pretty fair arguments on both sides. And, unless we want to be able to let guys just play forever, which I probably wouldn't complain about, but I think that the NCAA is justified in the decision that they made there. And the other one was Wisconsin. You lost your top 4 guys, 2 of whom transferred because the other places that they ended up going were able to pony up more money. And the biggest thing that they ran into is last season kind of got derailed because some of that stuff started popping up at the wrong time of year. So am I wrong? Do you have any other teams that are big losers, or is it Oregon and Wisconsin for you?
I actually would say, to me, it's probably Wisconsin and Iowa for me. I just think Iowa, lost Tony Perkins. I know he had kind of checked out at the end of the year. He goes to Missouri, and Patrick McCaffrey, listen, it had run its course, and he goes to Butler. But I don't know if they have enough. They got Peyton Sanford back, which was good. Owen Freeman was terrific, but they don't have a great NIL package. And that's when you look at like probably Wisconsin and Iowa and some of these schools. Most of the Big Ten has pretty good NIL. Now Michigan State, Izzo didn't really dive in again. He got your boy Frankie Fiddler on the roof. But other than that, they didn't really go into the portal very much, and he didn't go in at all a year ago. So it's really interesting to see, whether this works this year. He had enough freshmen coming in last season, and to me, that's going to be the key, how some of these guys progress from their freshman to their sophomore year.
Yeah. I was just never that high on Iowa to start with. Like, I would lump Iowa in with a team like Minnesota that lost a whole bunch, but is also kind of like what were we expecting there out of them. I wouldn't put Michigan State in that conversation. I don't know. We're going to talk about this a little bit more when we get to.
I'm not saying loser. I guess you're right. They're more of like, I just want to see Izzo lean into the portal a little bit more than he has to get one mid-major guy. And again, I think Frankie Fiddler is a nice player, but you're going to be so reliant on, some of the guys. Jay Nakins didn't take a jump last year. Like, I'd love to put him as a breakout player again, but at some point you're like, Jay Nakins probably is what he is.
Yeah, so I'm more, and I guess we can get to the Michigan State conversation now. I'm more betting on the idea that Jeremy Fears and Xavier Booker are going to be guys that step into much bigger roles. I think Jeremy Fears is going to start at the point. If all goes according to plan and Xavier Booker starts at the 4, then I think that you have a couple of big guys that can kind of rotate through with the 5. I would love to see lineups that had Booker and Cohen Carr playing together. I don't know if we'll necessarily see that out of Tom Izzo, but I don't hate the idea of betting on your ability to identify and develop freshmen and filling the gaps with the with players out of the transfer portal. I think getting Frankie Fiddler, who is probably going to be their best or second best wing, and getting Simon Zapala, I guess, is that where we're going to go with the pronunciation, the Longwood transfer, just to kind of be like a 10 to 12 minute per game guy at the 5 spot is not the worst thing in the world. So I like seeing some of these guys that are zagging when everybody else is zigging, that are just kind of saying, look, we're going to bet on the development we have. Because if you look at the teams that have had the best transfer classes the last couple of years, they didn't necessarily turn into the best results that season. So I do think that there is something to be said for the ability to be able to create that culture of continuity. And whether or not it ends up working for Tom Izzo is yet to be seen. But I'm not going to, you could be the guy that's going to bet against Tom Izzo finding a way to get a team to win. I'm not going to be the guy that's going to be betting against Tom Izzo finding a way to win. I'll let you be on that island.
Yeah, I just would have liked to see them go after like an elite transfer. Just go after a dude, and then because I think that's what they're missing here. I don't think they have a dude yet. Not that we see. I mean, Jeremy Fears, I love in high school and AU, but we don't know how he's going to be. Trey Holloman's a nice player. Jaden Akins, like I said, kind of is what he is at this point. And Xavier Booker probably took a jump, but I don't think we're expecting Xavier Booker to put up, 15 and 10 every night. So what do you have then? You got a bunch of good players, and then you're relying on Tom Izzo to have to outcoach everybody, where to me, I would have loved to have seen him get one more dude out of the portal. Like one more big
where I will agree with you. Where I will agree with you is that Umar Ballo didn't look at Michigan State, nor Chad O'Meara wasn't really pursued by Michigan State. Cliff Amori, Jonas Adu. You go down the list of some of the best big guys that were in the portal, and none of them were involved with a program that is considered one of the top 10 programs in college basketball that had a major void at the 5 spot. And what Michigan State ended up with was a guy that spent 3 years riding the bench for Utah State before averaging 9.8 points in 16 minutes or whatever it was at Longwood, playing in the Big South. So that is where I will agree with you. But at the end of the day, like, Tom Izzo's Tom Izzo. I think he's going to find a way to be able to make this team be able to win enough games. And if he's betting on a couple of really highly touted freshmen that he thinks are going to do well, then I kind of like seeing those teams that develop players over the years. So listen, when we get back, we're going to talk about some of the biggest storylines heading into next season. We're going to talk about Purdue without Zach Edey, and we're going to dive into the Indiana and Illinois experiments and whether or not we believe it's going to work at those two programs. That's coming up next. Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of The Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system. Welcome back to the Tuesday evening edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. We got about 10 to 12 minutes left here, so let's finish up this Big Ten offseason reset. What is the biggest storyline for you in the Big Ten this upcoming season? Because I think there are a lot of storylines that we can dive into. For me, it is Purdue without Zach Edey and what the post Big Z, the real Big Z era, is going to end up looking like in West Lafayette.
Yeah, I mean, I think Purdue, Indiana are two that everybody's going to focus on, right? What's Purdue looking like without Zach Edey? What's Indiana look like with all this talent and all this NIL? And then I think the third one is the influx of teams coming from the Pac-12, right? I mean, you look at that, and it's obviously realignment has changed everything, but it's going to take a while to get used to the fact that, we got UCLA and USC and Washington and Oregon in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I have Purdue as a top 10 team. And I know people, I can promise you that there are a lot of people that disagree with that based off of the way that my mentions have looked over the course of the last week and a half or so. But I am betting on the idea that Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyal are going to be one of, if not the best backcourts in college basketball. I think Trey Kaufman-Wren and Miles Colvin and Cam Heide and all of those guys are ready to take a big step forward this season. I trust in Matt Painter being able to develop players and get them better and get them to a point where they're able to win. And they got a lot of guys that have won a lot of games. And why would I bet against a coach and a bunch of players that have won as many games as they had over the course of the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years? The other one for me is Dusty May joining from Michigan, because I'm always fascinated by the guys that end up being anointed as the next like superstar head coach, or the guy at the mid-major level that ends up having like all of the hype heading in. Because there's always like, it was Andy Enfield and it was Shaka Smart and it was Archie Miller, and all of these guys have had varying levels of success once they've reached that level. But I do think that there's always a level of pressure that is put on them that is maybe unfair for what the expectation should be when they get to that new job. So I'm always fascinated to see what the next darling of the coaching ranks will do when they get to that bigger level. Like, I think Shaka is the most interesting one out of that group. He waited for 4 or 5 years to get his big move and get the job that he wanted, and he got to Texas, and like he did fine there, and then basically lost his job after earning a 3 seed for Texas. Like, it just. And then once he left, he went to Marquette, and he kind of found the perfect landing spot for him in a job that he had a shot to get before he took the Texas job, and was probably the better fit for him. So I'm very, very interested to see what Dusty's going to do at Michigan.
And I want to see what the Must Bus does at USC. He's got a kind of a different philosophy here so far, right?
It's so weird hearing that in a Big Ten preview. Like, I can't wait to see what Eric Musselman does at USC when we're talking about the best. That's never gonna be normal to me. I'm sorry. It's just never gonna. Every time I hear it, I'm gonna laugh.
The other part is, I mean, think about it. He took his shirt off enough in Fayetteville. What the hell is he gonna do in LA? Like, he may never wear his shirt in LA.
Hopefully, he'll have a better tan than you do right now.
I know. I got a little red the other day, actually. A little red. Can you see?
A little. Yeah.
Little red.
Yeah, it doesn't help that you have a nice orange shirt on that's really just bringing out the beach vibes.
It matches my forehead. But Muss is going a different route than he went in Arkansas, where he got those high-end freshmen, the Nick Smiths of the world. And now he's going with kind of a different group that I think is probably a little bit lower maintenance is probably the right word for it after last season's team, and hoping that, again, he can build this thing and make them pretty good this year. All right, give me your X factors. Give me your X factor or factors. Who do you got?
There's 2 that I'm really, really interested in kind of how these play out. One of them is the obvious one that we've kind of talked about plenty over the course of the last month and a half or so, and that's Indiana and Mike Woodson's coaching decisions and what he's going to do with that roster. Will he play Mackenzie Mbako at the 4? Is he going to force lineups where Malik Renault and Umar Ballo are on the floor together? How's it all going to work out? Like, is there going to be enough shooting? Are these pieces going to match together? And so that's one of them for me. The other one is Illinois. And I'm really, really intrigued to see how this kind of European experiment is going to end up working out for them, because I think that when you look at a roster that has a Trey White and a Kerry Booth and a Kylan Boswell and a Ben, whatever his last name is, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it because I'm just going to brutalize it as Rickhouse, according to our producer Trevor Valise in my ear, Ty Rogers, Dre Gibbs Longhorn. Like, there's a lot of good pieces on that roster, right? I don't know if there's necessarily a star on that roster. And they went out in the portal and they got Kasparas Yakashunis and they got Big T, Tomislavi.
He's a freshman.
Big Z,
Kasparas is
brother.
a freshman.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're bringing in these two freshmen as well.
Right.
And I'm just, they did not work great in every situation where a Euro was brought in to kind of fill a gap last season for a freshman. But those guys might also be better than some of these other players that we saw last season. So everything about the way that that Daddy Brad went out and built this roster in the offseason is really interesting to me, because it's not going to be easy to, I mean, look what they lost, man. Terrence Shannon, Marcus Domas, Coleman Hawkins, Quincy Guerrier, Justin Harmon, Dane Danger, Luke Goody. They lost like basically their entire core. And then also a lot of those developmental guys that you were hoping would be stepping into some of those roles in the next year. So it's going to be very interesting to me to see how all of this stuff comes together for the Illini this season.
So for me, the X factor is clear, and it's two guys at Rutgers, and it's Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, two freshmen. Now, again, we've seen how freshmen have struggled to assimilate into college basketball and make the breakout that they have had over the years. Can these guys do that for Rutgers? Is this the right way to go if you're Steve Peichel, putting all your eggs in one basket with these two freshmen? Now, I think he had no choice, and unbelievable for Brandon Knight to help get these two guys to Rutgers, but I just don't know. I don't know if you can win at the highest level here with your two best players being freshmen. I like Harper, Ron Harper's son. I think he's a really good player. I haven't seen Ace Bailey in person, so I've seen him on tape, and again, he looks phenomenal. So I can't wait to see how these guys do coming out of the gates as maybe two guys are going to build around.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's kind of the same thought process as this Illinois, X factor or storyline, whatever you want to call it, because the last couple of years, building around freshmen hasn't been as lucrative or as successful as building around some of these older guys and being able to use the transfer market to kind of tap into what you've developed within your own program. So, like I said earlier, I really do think that Rutgers did a good job getting some pieces out of the portal that will fit around their two guys. But again, at the end of the day, you're building around a couple of 18-year-olds in a league where there's a whole bunch of guys that are 23, 24, and even 25-year-olds are going to be playing a lot of minutes. All right, give me your breakout player, because I think that there are so many options for who you could pick for this list. I'm curious who, give me the number one guy on this list for you.
Really hard. I have three written down. I'll pick one of the three. But the three written down I have are Xavier Booker, Cam Heide, and Aaron Bradshaw. And I'm gonna go with Aaron Bradshaw. I am. I'm gonna go. I don't know how good I feel about it, but I feel like, man, if it clicks, holy shit. Because we've seen him before and what he can do. Shooting threes, the way he can move, the way he can block shots, get up and down the floor, be a lob threat. He's skilled too. Like, if the light goes on and stays on, watch out. So I think Bradshaw would be number one for me, but he's an X factor too. Like, he's an X factor and a breakout player for me all at the same time. I also love Cam Heide. I think Cam Heide's going to have he'll break out this year.
Yeah, I think you have like 5 different guys that you could list on Purdue that could end up being like Trey Kaufman-Renn without Zach Edey in front of him could end up being like a 15-9 guy. So I think that you got to put him in that conversation as well. Miles Colvin will be really good. I had Jeremy Fears and Xavier Booker were like 1A and 1B for me. I think that if Michigan State is going to be really good, those two guys are going to be really, really good. And I also had Aaron Bradshaw written down. One guy you didn't mention, Kwame Evans at Oregon. I think that Oregon's going to have a couple of really good guards that will step in there. I think Jackson Shellstead, I don't know if I would qualify him as a breakout guy. I feel like he broke out at the end of last season, but he could step into a bigger role with, I'm blanking on his name, the kid that had like the back-to-back 30-point games in the NCAA tournament last year for Oregon. But Kwame Evans as a sophomore big guy, he had a couple of 20-point, 10-rebound games last year. Without having N'Faly Dante there, is going to be asked to play a much bigger role. And I got one more for you too. And I think if Indiana is going to live up to the potential of being a top 10 team, Mackenzie Mbako needs to be a first team all Big Ten caliber guy. Doesn't have to be listed on that first team, but he's got to be good enough to be in that conversation. And if he is, it probably means in my mind that he was slid down to the 4 spot, that he's able to go up against other power forwards, against other bigs, that he's taken advantage of his shooting ability and the mismatches that created at the 4, that he gets essentially put into an Alex Caravan role. And if he does that, I think he has a chance to be like a 15 or 16 point per game scorer for Indiana this year.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Mbako is certainly a guy that could break out and has all the natural ability to be able to break out. All right, last thing, breakout team. I'm going to start. I'm going to go with the Oregon Ducks. In Dana Altman, I trust. He brings back one of the best guards, I think, in America this year, Jackson Shelstead. He's got some veterans that have been with him for a while in the Bartholomew kid and Nate Biddle, and then a couple of freshmen that came back that were highly regarded, right? I mean, Kwame Evans and Mookie Cook. So TJ Bamba brings in as a transfer. So I don't know. I just feel like people have kind of given up a little bit of Dan Altman. And this past offseason, if you remember, a lot of people, he had to answer the questions about him like retiring or being forced to retire. I think this is going to motivate him even more.
I love the Oregon one. I had Rutgers written down as one of the 3 on my list. You kind of sniped them earlier. So I'm going to go with Maryland. I think this is the year that Kevin Willard gets them back to being a top 25 team, gets them back into the NCAA tournament. And I think that there is some sleeper potential there for the Maryland Terrapins to end up being a team that wins the Big Ten. I think that if you can find, jump on when BetMGM posts those odds, if you can find a nice, tasty future on Maryland to win the Big Ten, that is something that is worth taking a look at. But listen, this has been fun. It's been the Tuesday evening edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. We've been live on YouTube. We've been live over on Stadium. We'll be here for the next about 3 weeks live every Tuesday and Thursday, 9 p.m. We'll see you guys in about 48 hours Thursday night.